Welcome to Learning Through Math, the podcast. I'm Laura at I Teach the Why.
I'm Karina at Mrs. Cousins 5. Our mission is to inspire ourselves and others to keep learning and improving with passion.
And hugs! You can find us at learningthroughmath.com and on Twitter at Laura and Karina.
Come and join us on this journey of learning.
Thanks for joining us. We are recording this in September of 2020.
And welcome to episode 14, WAM, the wonderful area model.
You got it, WAM. We want to give a shout out to our family this week. We figured this was episode 14, which reminded us of Valentine's Day, so we wanted to spread the love.
Yeah, show the love
to our families.
Big thank yous to our moms. I think those were the original ones that listened to us. Of course, moms will, right?
Of course, because moms do everything for us.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mom.
Thanks, Mom. And it's funny because they both had the same comment. They're like, we love listening to you. You finish each other's sentences. Sometimes I don't even know who's talking, right?
Yes.
Oh, it's cute.
And on Sundays, my mom and I listen to our podcasts in the car. We started going on these, we called them Sunday drives, even if it was in the middle of the week, 91 days after COVID started and we were on lockdown. Because she lives in an adult living community and she was basically quarantined for 3 months.
Right.
So when she was able to get out, to break out, she came directly to my house.
Aww.
And we'd start just because I was like, where are we going to go? So
right.
We just literally started driving. So people, if you want to know about any street in South Florida now, from the East Coast to the West Coast, I've probably driven on it with my mom.
Laura's your girl.
So I would call this Adventures with Mom on Facebook and just, put everything out. But on Sundays, we would listen to the podcast. And again, she said the same thing. Like, it was just so great, you know? So thanks, moms.
And to my husband, Matthew, who's a math coach. So he's been listening to a few episodes here and there. Now that school's gone back, he'll probably listen to a few more in the car. And Brody and Alex, my kids, Brody even commented on YouTube. So cute. And he said, this podcast is awesome.
Wasn't it so awesome?
I think it may have been. And yesterday we watched the Class Dojo videos, the growth mindset, because he was getting frustrated. And I think it helped him. At first he was reluctant to watch it. He said, this looks like a kindergarten video.
And he's in fourth grade
now. In fourth grade, yeah. So here it starts. And so it begins, right?
Yes, it does. Just wait till they're 16.
Oh, gosh. After he watched them, he was like, oh, yeah, that was all right. And I told him, I said, I play these for my students every year. This is how we, in fifth grade, we start our school year like this, and we go back and discuss it. And afterwards, he was better with it. And he was like, oh, yeah, I get it. And we, we had a good conversation about keeping that positive mindset with challenges. And then yesterday in the car, Alex, my daughter, we were talking about her day and how it's going with math.
And she's in first grade this year.
She's in first grade. And she said, we do this thing where we're looking at dots on a card and it's so fun, she says. And I'm like, well, those are number talks. And she's like, at the top of her lungs in the car, I love number talks. And I'm like, oh, me too, baby girl, me too.
Subitizing all the way. I want to say thank you to my husband, Pedro, and my son, Christian.
And Pedro, I want to say thank you to Pedro, too, because he's been so helpful with all the tech stuff. Yeah.
And even Christian, if he and I are in the car, sometimes I'll put on our podcast, and he listens to it, too, and gives us good feedback as well. Our reflection for this week, number sense routines.
Yes. Every year when I start teaching and I do a number talk or I try, I do a counting around the circle, it's so obvious how important number sense routines are in the classroom.
And so eye-opening, right?
Yes. And how critical, I'm going to use that word again, how critical they are in the math classroom. And it's sad that I think sometimes it gets skipped in a lot of classrooms.
Maybe because teachers don't understand the absolute value of it. And I don't want to say importance of it. If you look at so much research, which you know I do,
right?
Kids that don't have a good sense of number by the end of first grade are basically screwed.
Yeah.
And even if you have kids that can, quote, do the math, right, with regurgitating all the procedures, if they don't know the why behind it and can't be flexible with numbers, they're not real mathematicians.
Right. I know that we're pressured for time. I know that that's a big time constraint is
always
a big hurdle in the classroom, but we've got to do them.
We literally cannot tell you how important.
It's not number sense routines are not just something that should be happening in the primary classroom. They should be happening
throughout high school.
Yes, 100%. And I think that if more teachers, please spread the word, right?
Yes.
If more teachers got on board, I think we would see huge gains.
Huge.
Because they're making sense of it.
Yes.
Right? They're making sense of the math.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So the good news for this week.
Yes.
I just want to share, Mom, I got to see you 4 times this week, which was a record breaker. It was also her birthday on Friday.
Yay.
So we got to actually go to her because she had just gotten the word that visitors were now allowed on Thursday, and then Friday my son and I drove down to surprise her at her place for her birthday. So that was my good news for this week.
That is good news.
We're going to move into today's topic of area model.
And we've discussed this before, but we're really going to dig deeper into area model today.
Again, this is one of those super important concepts.
Yeah,
that kids,
visual models.
Yes, that kids really need to understand.
Yes. And again, it needs to continue.
Yes.
Not just in elementary.
But how many of our middle and high school friends have told us that they have now seen the benefits?
Yes.
Because when they do distributive property or foil things or whatever, that the kids really understand it now.
Yes. And of course, when I was growing up and I was learning math, this is not how I learned math.
Nope.
And I wish that I had, because when I see those factoring questions and the, multiplying, what are they, polynomials
and binomials,
all of that, I'm like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense.
I remember foil, first, outer, inner, last.
Yeah.
Done.
Yeah.
Right? No.
I wish that I had seen it like that. It would have just...
Yep.
I mean, luckily I was a good memorizer, so I was fine in math, but it would have just made so much sense.
Yep. Such a difference.
Yeah. We're going to talk about how the area model kind of first starts.
Yes.
The beginnings of it. And really they're introduced in 3rd grade. It's not an area model, it's an array.
It's an array. So the difference that I think of between array and area model is that arrays have gaps in between the little pieces of things. Where an area model, it's pushed all together, so there's no gaps and no overlaps. 3rd grade teachers especially, we're talking to you right now. Please break out the colored tiles.
Yep.
Cheez-Its.
Base 10 blocks.
Post-its. Square Legos.
Yes.
Any concrete thing.
All of them.
Yes.
Just because you did it.
Right.
Just because you did it yesterday doesn't mean we don't do it again today.
Exactly.
Right? They can make their own. They can, get creative.
Yes. But make sure that they live in the square rectangle world, because they have to understand that we're not going to have one left over right now.
Right.
Listen, we'll deal with that when they get into 5th grade.
Right.
With interpreting the remainder and all of that. But just for array, it has to be a square or a rectangle.
And rows and columns. Rows and columns.
Please teach vertical and horizontal when you're teaching rows and columns.
Yes. As the year progresses, then you'll start introducing area model and
definitely pick it up heavily in 4th grade.
And using those same concretes, right? We've worked with it with tiles. Now we're just going to squish them together. And what do you notice? What do you see? What patterns are you noticing? There needs to be a lot of discussion around patterns in mathematics, because that again builds those connections and makes them think about how it's related to one another, how this model is related to the other.
And the more connections the kids can make, the more it's going to go into their long-term memory.
Right.
And they'll own the learning.
Yes.
That's it. teachers, we have to stop talking.
Yes.
Let the kids do the learning.
Yeah.
I said another time, I wish our definition of teacher would change. Like, I don't want to be called a teacher anymore.
Right.
I want to be called, like, I don't know.
Facilitator is the
learning,
best one, right?
A
yes.
facilitator of
yes.
learning. That's a lot of words, though.
We could just be the Falls.
FOL.
That doesn't sound as nice.
Yeah. Listeners, if you have a better idea, let us know. The one thing with area model is that we really want the students and you teachers to use proper lengths of things.
Right.
We don't want it to turn into, quote, the box method.
In the visual representation, right? You mean?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Because we don't want it to turn into just another procedure, another algorithm.
I think that's been the big misconception and the big takeaway for me is that when they come to me in 5th grade, a lot of the times it's having to undo this idea that the area model is just a procedure. Right. It's just a procedure again. I'm breaking it apart in place value and I'm putting them, the tens and the ones on the top and on the tens and the ones on the side. And some of them are not there yet.
No.
We talk about how in number talks we want them to be flexible. In math we want them to be flexible as well. And efficiency is different for every kid. If they need to break it up into 10, 10, 10, right, for 30,
and some kids have never even thought about that or seen it.
Right.
Now listen, I'm not going to lie. I have used the box method, and what I tried to avoid using it until I knew that the kids understood the concept of the area model. But again, we're trying to move into efficiency.
Yeah.
And when I figured, okay, these kids understood really what the area model looked like, I would just save some time. But now you're making me rethink, should I even go that way? I don't know.
Right. I mean, I try to avoid it just because I'm trying to make sure that they understand. And I'm okay if for the whole school year, for all of 5th grade, they see it visually, where it makes sense. It's not perfect.
No.
If I draw 100 as my length and 40 as my width, sometimes my 40 kind of looks like 80 of it, right? Compared to the 100. But as long as that 100 is longer than that 40, and I try to make the other parts of it also shorter.
Right.
I'm just trying to go for what does it visually look like as close to I can.
If we have the kids, let's say, use the colored tiles on their desks, then have them take a whiteboard marker, because the whiteboard marker does erase off of desks.
Yes.
And just have them outline each of the sections.
Yes.
And then move the tiles away.
Yes.
Fill in the extra lines, and then let the kids.
I love doing that when I'm teaching decimals and when we're multiplying by decimals. I will show them what it looks like, right, with using the grids, and then I'll turn off my document camera so that all my writing is still on the whiteboard, and then they'll see, it's the area model.
Right.
I don't think that they've seen that connection. Right.
You just made me think of a game that I've seen on YouCubed, which I think it's called How Close to 100, and I remember playing this with kids in 3rd and 4th and 5th grade, where they looks kind of like arrays, but it is an area model because you're using grid paper, but they roll 2 dice, and let's say they roll a 3 and a 4. Well, they have to shade in the 3 and the 4. We'll link that in the show notes. I think, isn't it called How Close to 100?
I think it is, yeah.
Okay. And I've done it where the kids played competitively, who filled up more space, or we've done it as a class, which team has filled up the most space.
Right.
Like, you can have them play it, all different kinds of ways.
With area model, what blends itself so well naturally is the distributive property. This is another one that a lot of times becomes a procedure. Break this one up, add them, make sure that these two add up to the first factor, right? It becomes a procedure, and then it makes no sense to kids. They never use it. They don't get it. They're like, wait, do I have to break this one up or the first one or the second one?
Yes.
They have no understanding of it.
Well, how about even when we have a 2-digit by 2-digit number that we're multiplying, how many kids only, if they see the numbers, they'll multiply the 10s by the 10s and then the 1s by the 1s.
Always.
And then we're done.
Especially with fractions.
Oh, geez.
Right? Whole number times whole number, Fraction times fraction,
We're done.
Yeah. And that's where I always show them the area model.
Yep.
And I'm like, you've only done part of it.
Ex-
You've only done not half, because it's not half.
I'm giving you the I agree with you symbol from Number Talks.
Yep.
Exactly.
It's not half, but you've done only 2 parts of it. You have 2 more parts.
Yep. What happened to this?
Yeah.
Yeah. Show me where those numbers go in on the area model. And they're like, oh.
Oopsies.
Using the area model has also changed our way
Yes.
of multiplying numbers.
Yes.
We literally just got off watching a webinar with Graham Fletcher.
Who is awesome.
Yes.
Love him.
Another one of your Canadian
Right?
friends.
Again, I'm telling you.
So many good people come out of Canada, including you.
Thank you.
He gave us a problem to solve that was a mixed number times a mixed number.
Yes.
And I immediately drew the area model
Yes.
to solve it.
Yeah, that's what I did too. I didn't have paper pen, so I was trying to
Visualize
visualize it, and keep it all in my head. But yep, I went right to the area model.
Wow. Because we might have missed the other 2 parts, right?
Absolutely. Well, and it's just not, I don't think it's efficient to switch it to an improper fraction, right? You and I had talked about this, that who wants to deal with all these huge numbers?
And then you got to divide.
Right. You have to divide it. No. Why?
Exactly. Plus, you can also show it visually using your colored tiles or the graph paper, you know?
So I don't know who needs to hear this out there, but you do not have to teach multiplying fractions by turning them into improper fractions or fractions greater than 1. Right. You can teach it with just mixed number times a mixed number and
put it in the area model.
Put it in the area model.
Nice.
And area model is also really effective representing it as a division problem. Now, when I first saw this, I was a bit overwhelmed. I'm like, I don't really understand the purpose of this. Again, it just felt like another procedure. It didn't really feel valuable. But now that I know it better and I feel more comfortable with it, the kids are like, that makes so much sense.
Especially think about, let's say you take a lower quote number.
Right.
And you put, I don't know, 48 color tiles out and you want to divide it by 3. Well, now you know you have a total of 48 color tiles on the inside, but you have to have 3 rows.
Right.
So the question is, how many columns are there?
Yes.
And wow, mind blown for the kids.
Yep. Another important thing to note when we're teaching area model is that
we could distribute it.
Right. Anyway.
Right.
And I always try to encourage the kids, like, how else could you do it?
Right.
How else could you do it? What else could you do?
I think first we just tend to go to the place value part.
Right.
Until we know that they have good number sense and know what numbers are compatible with other numbers. Because if you're talking like 264 and you don't know that 16 is compatible with that,
right,
you're going to probably use 264 divided by whatever. Let's say it was divided by 4 but then you also have to know, is 4 compatible with 200? Is 4 compatible with 60?
Yes.
Is 4 compatible with 4?
Yes.
Right?
Yes. And it's all where the kids are in their math journey, right? It's if they're not ready yet for 30 times 40, then break it up into tens, right?
Yes.
10, 10, 10, 10, 10, and just, that's it. Just 10 times 10. What's 10 times 10? Most kids know 10 times 10 is.
Yes. Yes.
So just break it up into 10 times 10 and until they start to see it and they can come up with it. Let them come up with it.
Same thing when they move to just distributive property. You can break up numbers however you want.
Yes. We always do a challenge. Who can do it in 4 different ways? Who can do it in, right, like with 4 different groupings. Right. And when I use area model with decimals, it's so powerful because we start talking about a tenth again. So let's say the example is, 3 and 5 tenths times 4 and 6 tenths. You can keep your whole numbers, 3 times 4.
Right.
And with your decimal parts, you could do a tenth, a tenth, a tenth, right? If that's where the kids are, then let them be there. You could do half, so 5 tenths, and then a tenth.
Or 3 tenths.
Or 3
whatever.
tenths, right, or whatever the example is. Or 3 tenths and 3 tenths, or however they want, however they feel that they're comfortable.
I have done, like you said, the 3 8/10 times 4 6/10 using base 10 blocks right on the table so that they can actually really see it concretely.
Yes. And just think of all the patterns and all the things that they're noticing every time they distribute it another way.
Exactly.
That's where the power lies, I feel.
All right, let's move to our challenge for this week.
So I have an interesting challenge for you this week. This week, your challenge is you show us yours and we'll show you ours. So let's share our area models. And this is year-long.
You mean photos?
Yes, photos of area models. Photos of WAM, the WAM.
That's right.
And let's do this year long, because we know that the area model can be used for
everything.
Whole numbers, mixed numbers, fractions, decimals, division. Everything comes back to that. You can, just every concept just
I would love for middle and high school teachers to share with us.
I know.
Because we only live really in the
elementary
world, so we'd like to see where it ends up.
Yeah, and my mind can be blown, and I can be upset as to how I never learned it that way.
Right, you and me both.
For real.
Listeners, if there's a topic that you want us to talk about, just tweet us or shoot us an email, and we will definitely consider it.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us. We'd love for you to subscribe to our podcast and give us a 5-star review on your favorite podcasting platform. We invite you to join the conversation on Twitter by using the hashtag #LearningThroughMath.
We'd love to hear your feedback. Make sure to tag us at Laura and Karina. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.
To you too.